Hi, my name is Mike Koglin. I'm a producer, remixer and DJ, and I release my work on labels like Beats and Armada, as well as my own label Noise Music. Over the years I collaborated with many artists including Above and Beyond, Lunch and Alex Morph, to name a few, and I'm also a course developer and tutor here at Point Blank, and you are watching Production Analysis. Okay, in this episode of the Point Blank Production Analysis series, we're going to take a closer look at an absolute trance classic from 2006, Motorcycle As the Rush Comes. I've imported the track into Logic 10 here. Certainly brings back some memories. I used to play out a lot in my DJ sets, and it's a fantastic production by Gabriel and Dresden with jazz on vocals. There are some very interesting techniques going on in this track, which I'm going to try and deconstruct for you in this video. Let's skip back to this section here in the intro, where we get to hear the riff, which is the central theme of this track, and it continues pretty much throughout its entire length. So let's start with recreating this sound. I'm gonna load up a Logic ES2 for that. And we can create this pretty much from the factory default setting here. Let's also load up the Logic Virtual Keyboard, which looks a lot nicer now in Logic 10. And the notes that we need is that movement here from the G to the B with the added fifth underneath. So let's get this sound right to create that plucky kind of soul wave riff. I'm gonna pull down here the sustain in the ADSR curve, makes it more plucky. Also here with the decay value. And then I like adding a bit of the inbuilt distortion here in the ES2 for that kind of overdrive tube kind of sound. And then we pull down the cut-off filter frequency a bit. And that's coming quite close now, and I think we're ready to record it in. Quite a sparse riff, which relies heavily on the use of delays and reverbs. For now, let's quantize the notes. Command A for select all and hit Q. So that's quantized it to 16th now. You can loop it now. And then next up, I'm going to show you how to set up these sweeping modulating delays, which really make this riff and which become the signature sound of this track. But first, I'm going to actually add a kick drum. I found one that sounds fairly similar to the one that's in the track. Let's place it onto a spare audio channel. One on each beat, obviously. But then when working with these smaller bits of audio like a kick drum, what I like doing is pack them into a folder. Command F is the shortcut. And that makes them much more manageable. You can move them around per bar like this or loop them. So that's our basic dry riff now with the kick drum. Let's turn the kick down a bit actually. And now we're ready to set up the chain of effects that we need on the riff. There are obviously some dedicated third-party plugins for that sort of thing, from Ohmforce, for example. But I'm going to show you how to do this using native Logic plugins on a bus. First of all, we need a stereo delay. Let's send the riff to the bus. And then to get that rhythm as in the Rush Comes, we need a dotted eighth on one side. Let's compare it. So I think that's the sort of basic rhythm that we create with the delay, but we need a bit more feedback and also a bit more cross feedback. Like this. Then I'm gonna roll off the lowest frequency so the repeats are not as bassy as the original riff, and also roll off a little bit of tops. And then to get that sort of phasing effect in the delay, what you can do is alter the groove percentage just on one side of the stereo delay, just by a little tick, and that creates these sort of phase shifts between the left and right hand side. Then next up, what I'm gonna do is insert a compressor behind the delay on the bass, and that compressor is gonna really bring out the extra repeats in the delay. Set the ratio to something like 5:1, and then our main control will be the threshold here. We're gonna turn off the auto gain actually. And then a setting like this basically irons out the levels between the initial repeat and the feedback ones and helps them to cut through in the mix more. Okay, so let's set up the modulation that's going on in the riff of As the Rush Comes. Quickly gonna skip back to the original track. And if we listen carefully, we can hear actually there's not so much the riff itself that is being modulated, but it's the delays that are on top of it. So to be able to do this, we need some kind of filter. Let's go for the Logic Auto filter. We need to insert that in the slot before delay on the bass. Don't need any internal modulation. I want to be able to do that myself here. Let's switch to bandpass mode actually. I'm gonna also adjust the fatness and a bit more resonance. And then my main control is gonna be here the cutoff filter frequency. And it's starting to sound a little bit closer to the original already. Now there's obviously also a lot of reverb going on. So let's fire up the Logic Space Designer at the end of the plugin chain on the bass. Adjust the dry amount to full and turn up the reverb itself. And I actually like working with the default setting, which is a synthesized reverb rather than a sampled convulsion reverb. Set the length to something like 7 seconds. And if I now go back to the auto filter and play around with the cutoff frequency, we're starting to come really close to the sound that we want to recreate, with the delays being modulated before hitting the reverb. Now we could of course use the internal LFO to take care of the filter modulation, but I find that a bit restrictive, and I'd rather sort this out with automation. So first of all, here in the mixer, I'm gonna right click on the aux return channel, choose create track, creates track in the arrangement window. We can now open automation view and select auto filter cutoff frequency. Let's make this a bit bigger actually. And now I'm able to manually paint in the automation curve that we need with the filter closing and opening over the course of 4 bars. Kind of how it is in the original track, or we can also extend this over 8 bars and create a sort of curve with various degrees of the filter opening and closing. Automation actually looks a lot nicer now in the Logic 10 than it did before. Something like this, I'd say. I also want to add a bit more reverb again. And what I always do in the Space Designer is use the internal EQ and roll off all the lowest frequencies below 200 Hz like this. You still get to hear all the reverb, but this really helps to declutter your mix with those frequencies being removed. So that's my deconstruction of the riff of As the Rush Comes. You can learn more techniques like this at pointblankonline.net. In the next episode, we're going to take a closer look at the bass line and also the drums.
At Point Blank Online, you've got two methods of interaction with your tutor. Firstly, you've got the weekly online masterclass, which is in real time. And then also we've got feedback on your assignments, and that's known as DVR. So the online masterclass is a 1-hour session you get with your tutor every week. You can ask questions about the lesson content and get instant feedback, and also demonstrations on the fly from their computer desktop with our streaming technology. DVR stands for Direct Video Response, and the concept is really simple. You upload your Ableton Logic or Cubase project file to your tutor, he downloads it and then pushes record on the screen capturing software and evaluates your work, so basically giving you one-to-one feedback. You see all of the mouse movements and any parameter changes made by your tutor. It's kind of like sitting in the studio over their shoulder watching what they're doing whilst they work. We've found the DVR process has truly revolutionized the way that we teach online, and the results speak for themselves. Book your place on the course now by visiting pointblankonline.net.